Hi, my name is Rachel Paxton. Today I'm going to show you how to make and can homemade apple pie filling. In this class, I'll show you how to make and can apple pie filling. I'll lead you through the process step by step. I'll give you the recipe and canning supply list. You can download and print out for future reference. You'll find those in your course materials. You will also gain the confidence you need to try more canning recipes on your own. For this recipe, you're going to need approximately 24 cups of apples, 5½ cups of sugar, 1½ cups of clear gel, a tablespoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 7½ cups of water, and a cup of bottled lemon juice. This recipe is included in your course materials, so you can print it out. This recipe will make approximately 6 to 7 quarts of apple pie filling. 1 quart of pie filling will make 1 apple pie. If you don't know what clear gel is, it's a form of cornstarch. People used to use cornstarch in canning to make pie fillings, but it was determined that that is not safe for canning. It is not shelf stable. And so now there's something called clear gel that's used in the place of cornstarch. It is a form of cornstarch. It is cornstarch, but they modified it somehow so that it is safe for canning. So I had a hard time finding this in the store. If you are near any Amish stores anywhere, the Amish sell clear gel because they do a lot of canning and cooking that they use clear gel for. You can also purchase it online at Amazon. There's a link to it in the supply list for this recipe in your course materials. So it's about $10 for a pound of it. You can make quite a bit of pie filling with 1 pound of clear gel. The clear gel makes a really nice clear pie filling and makes it look just like you bought it from the store. So I've been really happy with it, and you will need some of that for this recipe. You'll also need a boiling water canner, canning rack if you're using your own stock pot, a jar lifter, a wide mouth funnel, and quart canning jars. This is what a boiling water canner looks like. If you don't already have one, you need to get one. They're between $20 and $30. You can get them at Walmart, or you can always get them on Amazon. There's a link to this in their supply list in your course materials. You can also use a large stock pot for canning. It just needs to be tall enough to have room for 1 inch of water above your jars when they're in the canner. You also need a canning rack like this in the bottom of your pot so that your jars don't sit directly on the bottom of the pan. You can purchase these for about $10. There's a link to this on your supply list. So if you want to use your own stock pot, you're welcome to buy something like this to put at the bottom of it. But these do come with a boiling water canner. Need a jar lifter to take your jars in and out of the canner. A wide mouth funnel helps you get your food in your jars. You're going to fill your canner about 3/4 of the way full with water. You don't need to heat the water quite yet because it'll take you a little time to get your apples ready, but at least get the water in there and get it ready. You want to sterilize your jars, rings, and lids in the dishwasher. Again, for this recipe, you'll need 6 or 7 quart-sized jars. I sterilize mine in the dishwasher because it's a lot easier. The other way to do it is to put them in boiling water on the stove, but that takes up a lot of room on your stove. So that's why I do it in the dishwasher and just leave them in there till you're ready to use them. You can reuse your jars and rings, but you can't reuse the lids. You need to replace them every time. They're very inexpensive. I always try to have extra on hand so that I never run out. You want to sort through and wash your apples. These apples aren't the exact apples that I used for this recipe, so these ones are wild apples. They're not as pretty looking. Usually for apple pie, you would use a Golden Delicious and Granny Smith or common apples used for apple pie filling, which are bigger and greener than these apples. But you can also use Gala and Fuji apples for apple pie, and they look more like these apples. They're reddish green. So sour apples generally make better apple pie filling. So you can pretty much use whatever kind you want, but the bigger apples usually make prettier slices in your apple pie filling. These apples are kind of small, so big apples usually work better. You need to peel and slice your apples. You can buy an apple peeler like this. It's called an Apple Master. There's a link to this in your course materials. They're not very expensive. They're less than $20. These core, peel, and slice your apples. You don't want to use this to slice the apples for this recipe because the slices it makes are very thin and doesn't make very good slices for your apple pie. So you can just peel the apples with this though, and it takes a lot less time. It takes the core out for you too. So I don't always use this. Sometimes I just do it by hand because once you're good at peeling by hand, you can peel apples just as fast as this thing peels apples. But it's kind of nice, and if you have problems with your carpal tunnel or anything and have a hard time with the potato peeler, then this might be a better option for you. It suction cups to your counter. So again, there's a link to this in your supply list in your course materials. So you want to slice and peel your apples. I usually slice them into quarters, so halves and then quarters or eighths. It depends on how big a slices you like in your pie. You will see that your apples will start to turn brown if they sit out very long. The way you can prevent that from happening is by putting them in bowls or pots of water treated with a tablespoon or two of wild lemon juice. That will help them from turning brown. After you've sliced all your apples, you want to combine your sugar, clear gel, cinnamon, and nutmeg and water together. If you put the dry ingredients in first before you put the water in, you'll have less trouble with lumps in your liquid. Lumps can be a problem with clear gel or just like if you're making gravy. So if you put the powdered stuff in first and then the water, then it works a little better. So use a whisk to whisk that together and cook it, stirring constantly till the mixture boils. And after it boils, you want to add the lemon juice and let it boil again. It's very important to stir this, especially in a stainless steel pan like this. It will scorch the bottom of your pan. I have done that before, so make sure you don't turn your heat up too high or don't walk away from it, or it will scorch the bottom of your pan. You can use an immersion blender also for removing any lumps from your filling. If you whisk it really well, you probably won't have any lumps, but sometimes I still have a couple lumps, and I like it to be perfectly smooth. This immersion blender is great for getting lumps out of your sauces. I use it all the time. They're about $20, and there's a link to this on your supply list also. I use mine all the time, and it's really good for making apple pie filling. But that is optional. You can just whisk it by hand also. But this is what the filling should look like after you're done, after it has thickened. Next, you want to put the apple slices into the pot and heat until the apples are heated through. It's important to leave the apples in there until the apples are hot. This particular recipe, the apples will expand a lot in your jar when you're processing them, and they will try to push the lid off your jar. That's happened to me a couple of times. They expand a lot, and so when you heat the apples ahead of time, the hotter they are, the less they're going to continue to expand when you're processing them in the boiling water canner. So make sure your apples are nice and hot. Just let them simmer in the pie filling and keep stirring it until the apples are heated through. If your pie filling is too thick, this looks a little thick here, you can add a little water to it so that it is the consistency you want it to be. Whatever it looks like now is what it's going to look like when you put it in your apple pie. So whatever consistency you would like that to be, that's how you want it to be now. After the apples are heated, you're going to ladle your apple pie filling into your quart-sized jars, leaving a generous 1-inch headspace. Make sure it's at least an inch, maybe just even a little bit more. I had a lot of trouble with my pie filling going to the top of the jar when I put it in the boiling water canner. That's why it's very important to use the proper amount of headspace. The headspace is the amount of space between the top of your pie filling and the top of your jar. Your food will expand when it's being heated, and if you don't leave enough room in your jar can break, or at the very least, your jar will not seal because there'll be too much food in your jar. So make sure you have at least an inch headspace, even a tiny bit more, and then you should get a good seal on your jar. Next, you want to wipe the rims of your jars with a damp paper towel or dish towel and place the rings and lids on the jars finger tight. Process pint or quart jars in a boiling water canner for 25 minutes. Make sure that there's at least an inch of water above your jars. Your water does not have to be boiling when you put the jars in, but it needs to be boiling before you start the timer. If you live above 1,000 feet in elevation, you need to process for a longer amount of time. So if you're above 1,000 feet, check an altitude adjustment chart. There's one in your course materials, and you can find them really easily free online. So just if you're not sure what your altitude is, you might want to check that. And if you're below 1,000 feet in elevation, just use the 25 minutes. Use a jar lifter or tongs to remove your jars from the canner and set them on the kitchen counter to cool. When the jars seal, you'll hear a pinging noise. Some of them will seal in the canner, and if it doesn't, it may still seal after you take it out. You don't need to worry about it until the jars are completely cooled off. It can take 10 to 15 minutes for them to completely seal. You can tell if your jar is sealed or not by pressing down your finger in the middle of the lid. If it goes down and up again, it is not sealed, and if it is flat, it is sealed. Your steel jars you can store in a cool, dark area for 1 to 2 years or more. And if it's not sealed, just put it in the refrigerator and use it in the next couple of weeks. Again, if you ended up putting too much pie filling in your jars and they didn't seal, you can process your jars over again. On the jars that I had that happen, I just took the lids off the jars because they didn't seal. I took the lids and the rings off the jars. I took some of the apple pie filling out so that it was an inch headspace again, because it had expanded so much that the headspace was gone that I had originally left. So take out the pie filling until it's an inch again and rinse your rings and lids off really well. You can use your lid again since it did not seal the first time. It's still good. And so rinse those off really well. Put them back on the jar, put the rings back on the jar, put it back in the canner, and boil it for another 25 minutes. And then your jar should seal the next time. So hopefully that won't happen to you. But if it does happen, this is the only recipe I've made where I've had trouble with that. So if that does happen, you still can save your jars. You don't have to throw them out or eat a whole bunch of pie or anything. So just process it again after you take a little of filling out, and it should work the second time. But hopefully it'll work for the first time for you. This was a learning experience for me too. And look at that beautiful pie filling. It's totally worth it. The 1 quart jar there will make 1 apple pie, and we will be enjoying that all winter. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope you give this a try and that your family enjoys it too. So give it a try and see what you think.